year expected lifetime. Wow. You can read more about that in the news section up at coasttocoastam.com.
Hey,
When
what's
we
up?
come
What's
back,
going on?
more of my conversation with
How you doing?
legendary Hollywood screenwriter Stephen E. D'Souza, right here on Coast to Coast AM. Stephen E. D'Souza, my guest. So you've given this mission. You've got to convince Arnold Schwarzenegger to play in Commando. So do you go and you pitch it to him yourself, the script?
Yeah, this is kind of a crazy story. There was Commando was a script originally written by Joseph Loeb and his partner Wiseman. Jeff Loeb, who's very well known now as a major comic book guy at DC Comics. He's an editor and done a lot of the most popular comics. And this is before he got in the comic business. And the script was originally about a Mossad agent, an Israeli immigrant who was now living in America, and the bad guys kidnapped his wife and child. Now, right away, you got a problem casting Arnold Schwarzenegger as a former Israeli Mossad agent. It's kind of a stretch of logic. Also, in the original script, it was like more reality-based to a degree. And the wife and daughter were not kidnapped till page 50. And then I guess the guys who wrote the script, they were, maybe they didn't grow up in a part of. I grew up in Pennsylvania. When the hero realized he needs weapons, they copied the scene in Terminator where Reese, who has time traveled back, breaks into a store and it goes into a supermarket and manufactures weapons from supermarket ingredients. Remember that? And that was the script that I'm going, this is America. The guy can just walk into an Army Navy store. They asked me to read the script. They say, make a picture of Schwarzenegger. So he said, we had the script. It was problematic. It was sitting on the shelf for a while. We think it could be adapted. Read it. So I read it. It says, come in the next day and tell us. So I come in the next day. Okay, here's what I've got. They said, save it. You're going to see Arnold at noon. And I go, well, wait a minute. I haven't even told you. We know you, Steve, from television. You'll come up with it. So now I'm driving across town with Joel Silver to go pitch the producer. And what I left out part of the story was, right before we started the movie, Larry Gordon got promoted to head of production. So he could not produce this movie he had put into motion. That would be double dipping. So he turns to Joel Silver and says, Joel, you're no longer an associate producer. You're going to produce this movie, which is a big step up for Joel, who's now, a big guy. So we drive across town. I'm trying to get it in my head. What is the story I'm telling him, which cannot be the Mossad agent, cannot have the wife and child, like kidnapped on page 50, and I've been up all night. So I go tell him the story, and I pitch him the story pretty much of the movie you've seen. But at one point, I accidentally segued into my Arnold Schwarzenegger impression, where I said to him, I said, Arnold, and then you say to him, remember, Sully, when I said it would kill you last? I lied. So he gives me this big look, and I go, maybe I went too far. And I go, listen, I do Cary Grant and James Cagney. I do all the greats. Anyway, I pitch him the whole story.
Nice comeback.
Yeah, I pitch him the whole story, and at the end, he says, I like this part. I'm not a robot from the future or a caveman from the past. I'm having a family. I'm wearing clothes. It's a part John Wayne could play. I do this picture. Joel, Steve, we do it. We shake hands. Now we get back in the car, and this is, again, 1985. So he has a car radio. Joel has a phone in his car, but at that time, a car phone was the same as a ship-to-shore radio. So he picks up the phone. He says, as soon as you dial it, they say, San Pedro Marine Operator, what is your emergency? He says, no, I'm in a car. I'm not in a boat. Connect me to 20th Century Fox. So he calls it. He says, Arnold's in. So now I'm writing the script like complete reinvention, and there's a writer's strike coming. Okay? And we got to finish typing like on a certain day. All pens, you have to stop. So we're just going to make it under the wire. And I believe it was like May 5th was when the strike started. All scripts had to be delivered to the Writers Guild by 5 o'clock to make sure no writing is going to happen during the strike. So finally, there's last-minute notes from the studio. We're finding the clock. It's getting crazy. The whole town is losing its mind. And I said, all right, send a messenger to my house, and I'll print the script up. It's better to write it at my house because there's no interruptions to the office. So I'm writing it home. The messenger's there to get the script. I said, I've just finished. Let me press print. And I press print, and then, of course, this is 1985. And when I press print, it's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and it goes, it's a dot matrix printer. And I go, wait a second. It's a half an hour drive to Beverly Hills. This guy's here. Let me do the math. Let me time this page. So I do the math, and I go, uh-oh, this script is not going to be done printing 108 pages until like 5:30. Oh, going to say F words on here. What am I going to do? So now I don't tell anybody. I'm going to panic, and there's no way this is going to work. So I call the Writers Guild and say, can I register a script electronically? Now, this is 1985. There's no internet. There is an internet, but we don't have it. They have bulletin boards and stuff. So the people in the strike office, the legal office, they have no idea what I'm talking about. So in desperation, I say, give me accounting, right? And I say, put accounting on the phone with them. I said, accounting, can a computer file have a date and time on it? Oh, of course. So you can tell incontestably when a file is locked, right? So now bring in the legal department. So there's like the strike office, the legal department, and accounting, and they have to explain to the lawyer and to the strike people that a computer file can be dated in time. They say, all right, you can send over a floppy disk. So I did the first registration of a script in Hollywood on Commando. I had on a 5 1/4 inch floppy. I sent the script over with the messenger and got there with 5 minutes to spare. And if you think that's crazy, I said it's like a student film. Now the movie starts. I get a phone call from Joel Silver. He says, listen, Steve, can we film a couple of scenes of the movie at your house? I go, what, are you kidding me? It's a student film. He says, look, last-minute things happen. He says, you know the scene in Jaws where the head falls out of the boat and gets a big scare in the movie? That was filmed in Verna Field swimming pool. The movie was out of money. The shot they did in, like, New England or wherever they shot, where they shot the movie, where the head came out, didn't look that good. They wanted to do it over. There was no money. So they went to Verna Field, the editor's swimming pool, and they did it in her swimming pool with no crew or anything.
Wow.
So that's where we are. Here's the problem. You wrote this opening whackings where these people mysterious, and one of them is the guy taking out his garbage. And the director, he realized that you can't make a K-turn on a garbage truck. To make a quick escape, it's got to be a cul-de-sac. And it's a long driveway, and I realize now, Joel says to me, you wrote your own house. That's your house with the long drive. So can we rent your house? All right, what the hell, why not? And also, we want to film the Vietnam flashback in your backyard, which is all trucks. So they actually filmed these two scenes at my house. The scene where the guy gets whacked with the garbage truck, that was my house I was living in.
Oh, now I got to go back and watch. Okay.
Yeah. So and it worked out right because it was a hill, so the garbage truck makes a dramatic entrance, quick escape. The other scene was a flashback to Vietnam that was like a Ken Burns with still pictures that were slightly animated. So they had a still cameraman take the pictures.
Right.
But after we filmed that, they changed the guy playing the villain. So the footage was unusable. Somewhere I have a photograph that was taken that day of me and Arnold's team in military gear, and my dad's in the picture. I'll provide it for you for your website. So that scene would have been the movie had it not been for the change in casting. That's why the villain was so out of shape. He was cast like 2 days before the movie started.
I got to ask you about, because much of what you do is not just, as a screenwriter, but also as a script doctor. And something I didn't realize is, I think you've referred to it as being a sort of a first responder. They'll screen a movie before a test audience. And sometimes the audience will be, they just don't like the movie. They'll walk out. Then they bring in the script doctor or the first responder. How many times have you been called, so you'll actually rewrite scenes after the movie has already been shot and they have to reshoot? How often does that happen?
Well, nowadays it happens much more often. You see, there's a lot of, first of
all
all,
right, now my
most
chat's on.
movies have built into their schedule and budget like a couple of days of reshooting, assuming something will go wrong, you want to do something there. But these major overhauls, like have happened recently, like movies like Solo, was, for
Babies
example,
on spikes.
is one that's well known. And now that we have social media, people are more aware that this goes on. It's becoming much more common, but I've done it quite a lot. And I think what happened was, as we moved into like the 90s and the 21st century, more and more of the top studio executives were sort of young television executives when I was working in television. And they would remember me when the studio was in a panic because an episode of the TV show had come out badly, having to save it in post and doing all kinds of desperate miracle worker kind of things in post-production. And I got so good at it that I have actually been hired to recut movies that I had nothing to do with. Like a movie's
Wow.
finished, I know the movie's made. I read it in the trades. I get a phone call. Will you look at this? Can you salvage this movie? And I'll recut the movie and add new scenes and things like that. So it's forget Story Doctor, which is before you shoot the movie. This is like Story Resuscitator. What's funny though is they're very ungrateful. Like I'll say, I know we were able to reset. It didn't make enough money. I said, this is like the mother who says, the old joke. He says, Mrs. Jones, I rescued your kid from drowning. Where's his hat?
Yes.
You're complaining the patient walked with the cane when he was paralyzed. So some of those movies I collect my my residuals like in the dark.
What are you waiting for, Mithrax?
And they go to a cash machine in a strange neighborhood so nobody sees me.
Now, residuals. I got to ask you about residuals because there's a thing that some of people in Hollywood do on social media where they will post a picture of like their smallest residual check. So what's the smallest residual check you've ever received?
I have a 4-cent check for Die Hard 2 for a foreign TV run.
4 cents.
Yeah, 4 cents.
Wow.
Now, what they do is they don't really. It would cost 35 cents to send you the check. What they do is they collect it all and they send you a statement. They send you one check. The Writers Guild does this with computers. And I was complaining earlier about profit participation. That the way the books are kept, and it's not that the books are crooked. It's just that this 30% fight for distribution, it has lost its validity long ago, and the fact that the money is borrowed, right, means there's always interest. So residuals, you always get an honest count. They'll brag like we shipped 3 million Blu-rays of whatever. So you go 3 million Blu-rays. A writer gets 1.5% of producer's gross. You really know that number. Where in the movie business, if everyone is honest, you still can't stop the kid in the ticket counter from letting his friends in the fire door. Right? Somewhere along the line in the movie.
There's some bleeding, yeah.
But the residuals is very, as we're talking here, I probably made $38. Somebody's watching like a Knight Rider rerun, in Estonia. There's enough out there.
Nice. So, I want to ask you about
the 4-cent check. That I will provide you the 4-cent check so you can post it on your site. Okay.
Okay, I'd love to see that. I want to ask you about studio notes because this is something that I understand drives screenwriters crazy. You submit a page and they send back all of these ridiculous notes.
I once wrote a fake studio memo, which I share with some friends and peers, and we all thought it was so funny while we cried through our tears because a typical studio memo goes something like this. Well, let's say we're making a movie of Coast to Coast. Why not? The radio things have become movies. So we're making the feature film of Coast to Coast. So the memo will come out and said, to the Coast to Coast team, we are tremendously excited about this latest draft. We feel that you've hit it out of the park with our last set of notes. We think we have the makings of a really terrific picture here and maybe even a franchise. We do have a few ha-ha in parentheses notes. By the way, they always say ha-ha in parentheses. Every memo I've got. So, okay, number one, we need to raise the stakes. We need to know that life and death are in the balance. That terror and horror are lurking around the next corner if our protagonists do not succeed. On the other hand, we must find every opportunity for humor and comedy. So what happens is, what these memos are, basically, there's a development team in the studio, and they all want to get their 2 cents in, and they all provide their notes to their boss. And the boss assigns one person to collate the notes. So the notes end up being almost useless because they try and cover every territory. It's like trying to make a raincoat and a swimsuit at the same time.
Do you get those same annoying notes from Netflix and Amazon?
No, Netflix and Amazon. I've actually had some meetings with them, like before and I'm actually going to be going in with. I'm going to be going in there with Roberto Orsi. We have a project that we're going to be going in there as well as the regular outlets, and they leave you alone. This is what we hear now: is the upside of Netflix and Amazon is once they say we're making your movie, they leave you completely alone. On the other hand, they buy it out completely. there is no profit participation. Whatever you got paid to do, you get. I mean, if there will be residuals, but there's no profit. They own it. They own the whole thing. So you're spared all of the torture of making the movie. It's a more pleasant experience, no meddling. On the other hand, the fantasy that your movie is going to be the one to beat Avatar and, bring millions, and you'll have your own helicopter and yacht, you have to abandon that. I happily would. In my own experience, I find that the less money is involved, the more freedom you have. I did a movie. This is a story that Bruce Willis has told. Nobody believed the story until he told it. It was my story. I got a phone call once from a guy who said, "Listen, I was left Flipper Channels. I see this movie. It's kind of a horror movie, and I realized that you did it. And wow, that was like you shouldn't be doing that. You should be doing your horror, your genre. I have a picture. It's right up your alley, and you can direct it. You write your own take. Just rewrite it for me. Well, it sounds interesting. What is it? It's Die Hard in a building, because
What?
Yeah, because at this time, Die Hard would be going to Die Hard on a boat, Die Hard on a plane. So the guy, without like embarrassment or shame, it's Die Hard in a building this time. Anyway, this movie that I did I shot in Canada. It was called Possessed, and I had a budget of like $4.8 million. And my cast, which was Christopher Plummer and Timothy Dalton, my cast was $2 million. So I only had really $2,800,000 to make the entire movie. But because every trick I learned, working weekly television, doing a 1-hour show every 10 days, I pulled every trick I learned in those years to make this movie and put the money on screen. And it was great because nobody cared. I was throwing scenes out. At one time somebody said we're running too long, and I did the John Ford trick. I just ripped pages out of the script. Nobody cared because there was so little money at stake. It was a wonderful experience.
I thought only completion guarantors did that. Actually, rip out this.
No, it was the one opportunity. Actually, I said we're running long, and I said, "Here, I had already decided to cut the scene." So we're in a great.
Stephen, I got to jump in here again. Pardon the interruption. We're going to take another time out. We'll come back, and I got to ask you about the director that you worked with on Judge Dredd. Great stories there. Back with more of my conversation with Stephen E. D'Souza right here on Coast to Coast AM. In news that's sure to start plenty of new conversations between people and man's best friend, a new study finds puppies are born with human-like social skills. Simply put, scientists say these adorable canines are able to communicate with people from birth. Generally, dogs need little to no training in order to follow directions, thanks to their innate genes, which have been developing for centuries. In fact, researchers at the University of Arizona say more than 40% of the variation in a puppy's ability to follow humans' finger pointing is due to their inherited genes. We found that there's definitely a strong genetic component, and they're definitely doing it from the get-go, says study co-author Evan McLean in a university release, and you can read more of the story in the news section up at coasttocoastam.com. And if you like what you hear tonight, this morning, and you want to find out more about me and what I do, you can go to my website, strangeplanet.ca. Everything's right there at strangeplanet.ca. You can now hear me weekday afternoons, 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern, on the all-new Richard Syrett Show on News Talk Saga 960 a.m. across the Greater Toronto Area. You can stream it live at saga960am.ca or find it on Simple Radio or TuneIn. You can listen to my weekly syndicated program, The Conspiracy Show, on AM 740, Zoomer Radio in Toronto. Excuse me. And my podcast, Conspiracy Unlimited, drops every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Subscribe at conspiracyunlimitedpodcast.com. Again, go to my website, strangeplanet.ca, and subscribe to my free monthly newsletter, strangeplanet.ca. All right, back to more of my conversation with Hollywood screenwriter Stephen E. D'Souza when Coast to Coast AM continues. There you go, the Flintstones. And I believe that was one of the highest grossing comedies of all time for a while there. I think it garnered about $500 million worldwide. Did you get any profit participation on that one, Stephen D'Souza?
Actually, I did. And even though this movie had 300-pound gorillas on it, like Steven Spielberg, and John Goodman, who would have had profit participation. That's what really takes. The stars sometimes get profit participation after the movie theater, meaning that there's no net left.
Thanks, Norin.
But the movie was so cheap, even with these big stars. There's only one set. They built Bedrock. It was on the Universal back lot. Right? Everybody had one outfit. I mean,
Right.
Fred Flintstone had one change of wardrobe when he got promoted. So you're going to work. There's no weather problems. There's no noise. It's the most perfect, a 100% studio picture on the studio lot. So it was so inexpensive to make. The movie cost I think it cost like in the low 40s, and it made I think $400 million or something. At one point, it was the highest grossing comedy. And then the only other movie I had to show profit was Commando, which was such a cheap movie. It only cost $11 million. And Arnold's agents were not able to demand profit participation because the studio said, look, we don't know if this guy can be in a movie where he wears clothes, where he's not a... No, really, we're going out on a limb. Will people accept him? Not in the future, not in a science fiction or a fantasy premise. It was a real question. It was a legitimate one. And then Joel Silver said to Larry Gordon, I want to discuss my profit participation, my back end, and then Larry just laughed. He said, this is the first picture you've ever produced. So there were no gross players.
All right.
So-
I got to ask you about Judge Dredd, because I know you were a fan of the comic book, but the director on this film obviously didn't know much about the comic book. Tell me about some of the ideas that he had, and you tried to correct him.
Well, it was funny. Danny Cannon has become a major guy in television. He has a very interesting dark sensibility. This show Pennyworth, which I really enjoy. It's like dark, it's twisted, it's perverted, and which just shows why he was a good choice for this movie. There were two problems. One is he would always present any idea he had that met with resistance as being something from the comic book that the fans would go crazy if they'd not seen in the movie. But I was very familiar with the comic book. In fact, I tried to get our producer, Ed Testman, to make the movie 12 years prior. So I would say that's not in the comic book, and he hated that. And the other thing was that he had this dark sensibility, which they liked, which they thought would fit the material. But as often happens,
Wasting death, Smith, Max.
they like to play with the dark in Hollywood, and this was supposed to be a PG-13 movie, which was made by Hollywood Pictures, which is a division of Disney, and they had a toy deal and they had a hamburger deal. Now, I knew how to write a PG-13 movie. Even though I had done a lot of R-rated movies, I had worked in television. And nobody writes these rules down. You have to know them by the seat of your pants. Like in television, network television, if you have a hostage, you can point a gun at the hostage, but not at their head. The networks say you cannot put it in their back. There's all these crazy things they never write down, but you learn over the years. So I wrote a PG-13 script. So anyway, they're all filming in London, and Andy Bonney, a wonderful guy, died recently. He calls me up and says, Steve, we got some dailies in, come and see it. So I ride my bicycle over. I always get points going to meetings, like coming over with bicycle clips on my pants. It used to be who was more macho in Hollywood, now it's who was Kian F. more Verde, who was more green. So this is the scene in the movie where there's a reporter who learns that there's a conspiracy, and he goes on the air, there's a conspiracy, we're going to expose it. And he goes home to his wife, and to make it more like relatable, this is the future, I write in the script that this is like your grandparents' house. So the whole movie's futuristic. When this guy goes to his apartment, it's like your grandmother's apartment. There's doilies and like an old television. And she says, oh, Harold, do you think you really should have gone to that broadcast tonight? You're upsetting the wrong people. He says, don't worry. Judge Dredd will come through and prove I'm true. And then the door is kicked open, and the bad guy, Armin Asante, in Dredd's uniform, comes in and kills them. Now, I write in the script, cut to exterior window, and you see the flashlight of the machine guns. That's what I write. Kicks in the door, raises the gun, cut outside, you see lights and flashing. Right. Now I'm seeing in the dailies, watching the same scene, oh, Harold should have really said, oh, Judge Dredd will come through. The door kicks open, and now the camera does not go outside. They shoot this elderly couple like Bonnie and Clyde. Actually goes on longer, but I know we're getting to our last hour. Kills them in slow motion, for fucking ever. My jaw hits the floor.
We got to watch the language there.
What?
Can't say that. Can't say that word on it.
What? Well, I don't know what word I said. Anyway, I said my jaw hits the floor. I don't know what I said. Anyway, well, you'll bloop me. You bloop Bruce Willis earlier. You can bloop me.
Right.
So
Your house can
I go,
best show gratitude
Andy,
by
but
keeping your
well,
house
this is a PG-13. What
know your
you can't?
assistance
We
would
just
be
we're in
thanks.
trouble now. This one he says, oh, you
But
didn't.
not
Oh,
everyone
you don't,
in the
Danny.
city is so
He knows his stuff. Show it again.
You
No,
appear
once
to
is
be
enough.
settling
Show it
in.
again. Look at it more carefully. He runs it again.
I
I says,
believe you,
what was I supposed to see? Didn't you see?
You
There was
require
no
further
blood.
help from us.
They were
You must
they were
only ask.
bloodless squibs. That's PG-13. And I go, where the hell did you hear that? He said, Danny Cannon told me. I go, okay, I don't know. We're in trouble. So now it gets better. I wrote in the script, if you've seen the movie, at one point,
She seems willing
that
to get you anything.
Armand is that
must return to
Jurgen
the
Prunk now realizes he's made a bad deal with Armand Assante, and he says, Rico, this has gone too far. I'm pulling the plug. And then Armand Assante says, Robot, I want you to kill Jurgen Prunk now. Pull his arms and legs off. Save his head for last. I want to hear him scream. And I type here in America, the robot lurches forward. Jurgen Prunk now backs off screen. Now all we see is the shadows, horrible screaming and sound effects. As Armand Assante looks on happy and Joan Chen is a bit appalled. This is what I type.
I hope your stay with us will be
Danny
uneventful.
has the same audio animatronic giant puppeteers who made the robot make a life-size duplicate Jurgen Prunk now, and he films the robot ripping off the arms and legs and arterial blood squirting everywhere. He shoots this into the movie. I'll pause here for you to reflect.
Right.
All right, so now we finish the movie. They turn it into the motion picture MPAA. It's rated X. Complete panic now at the studio. That made the movie, which is Synergy. Complete panic at Disney, which is Hollywood Pictures, because you cannot advertise toys. You cannot have a hamburger deal. I mean, forget it, X-rated. So now they're desperately recutting this picture. The first thing that goes is ripping Jurgen Prunk now apart on camera. You know, they turn it again, X again. Right? After all, cutting out as much blood and gore as they can, it's still rated X. Now they're really sweating because you're only supposed to get 2 bites at the apple, right?
Right.
So now they recut it again, and Ed Pressman begs Jack Valenti. He was just finishing up his term as head of the NBA. Turn it again, it gets rated R. And that's all she wrote. We're stuck there. So now the hamburger deal with, I think with Burger King, they've already got warehouses of, action figures that are going to be in a Happy Meal. Trash them.
Oh,
They sue everybody. They sue Synergy. They sue Disney. The toy company, Kenner, was going to make a whole line of toys for the movie. They're made. They're in warehouse. They're on trucks ready to go. Another giant lawsuit. Now they don't know what to do. How do we advertise this movie? Nobody in America knows the comic book, and so they're in a panic. And they say, you know what? Let's lean into it, to the comic book origins. So the ad campaign for the movie was like the beginning of Marvel movies, where you see stills from the comic books.
Right.
But nobody in America knows this comic book. And then for whatever friggin' reason, they decide to make it look like newspaper strips, not even like comic books, like Marvel Comics. So the ads were like black and white with blue, like Peanuts. You know what I mean? Like a black and white comic strip in, in the papers. That's what. So there's a cartoon ad campaign that is like Stop Thief, and it looks like a children's movie. But it was hard R. So it was a complete mess. And as the dust falls, Andy Vani says, I can't believe Danny, he was so talented. We trusted him. Well, you know what? We are going to sue him because he had to deliver a PG-13 movie. We'll get him. So they go to take legal action against Danny Cannon, but because Synergy had never made a PG-13 movie, all they did was the R. They never gave him that piece of paper.
Wow. So he got off.
He never agreed to make a PG-13 movie. Now, the payoff of this story is, years later, Steve Cannell, legend in television, who I knew from my days at Universal Television, he calls me up and says, listen, I think you've got to, I know you've been dabbling in science fiction and stuff, and listen, I have an opportunity at Disney. They want to make a TV show, a movie out of The Greatest American Hero. Do you have a take? So I go over to Steve. We lost him about 10 years ago, a great guy. I go over to his office, and I pitch him my take on how to make a movie on Greatest American Hero. I go to a meeting at Disney, and I pitch it to the development people, and it's one of the 3 times in my life where after I tell my story, the people in the room go crazy and erupt in applause. I leave the room. Steve Cannell's hugging me by the elevator. I'm driving home. I'm just about to get to my driveway. Cannell calls me and says, I don't know what the hell happened here. They left the room. They're all excited. They went right upstairs, and the top brass said, Steve D'Souza, that son of a bitch screwed us so bad on Judge Dredd. He gave us an X-rated movie. We got sued by the toy company. He will never work at Disney again.
Wow. You had nothing to do with that.
Yeah. Actually, subsequently, I did work for Disney. These companies have a short memory. So later on, whoever remembered that was gone. But it was quite an experience, and it just shows you, like, the lines of communication, how they can get unraveled sometimes.
Right. As a screenwriter, Stephen, what percentage of the words that you write actually end up on the screen?
I probably have a better batting average than ever, because I do take notes. I was mocking it for, but there's a way to navigate studio notes, and to work your way through them. Something I try to do whenever I can is to spend time with the actors to get a sense of their speech pattern and their rhythm. If you have a competent script or a play, you should be able to cover the name of the person speaking, and just from the words they say, recognize who is speaking. I mean, clearly, Bruce Willis, his dialogue is entirely different than Alan Rickman. Not that one guy is a good guy and one guy is. There's pattern of speech, there's vocabulary, there's syntax. The problem with most writers is everybody sounds like them. You have to leave your voice at the door when the actors speak. The only time your voice is in the script is in the stage directions. This is where you can say, you can make a funny remark, or like, I think, I'm trying to think of, I'm losing my mind here. It's late for me. The guy who wrote, he wrote a bunch of great action movies. Anyway, he once writes this. He said, I would tell you what goes on in the scene when my mother reads the stuff. Like he would make remarks like that. Right. Stuff. So you can get your personality, or like whatever I sound like now. This is my person. I see people on Twitter, talking about me now that like I'm not a. Someone just said he's no drinking violet. So anyway, but you have to retreat. You have to retreat and let the characters speak. So because I listen to the actors and I try and fit it to their voice, they're very happy with what I give them almost always. I
watched this documentary called Tales from the Script, and his name escapes me, but he was the screenwriter for Air Force One with Harrison Ford. And he talks about Harrison Ford coming up to him and saying, hey, that was a great speech you wrote in the script, but I'm not delivering it. Has that ever happened to you?
No, I've had the opposite happen with me. I have this theory that the best actors to work with are either actors who come from the stage, because if you're trained on the stage, you are told that the words are sacrosanct, because the Playwrights Guild, you cannot change any words without the permission of the playwright. So, like, the actor can say, I hate this thing. The director can say, I hate it too. We got to talk to the playwright. There's no such thing with Hollywood writers. Nonetheless, the stage actors try and make it work because that's their training. Whereas actors who maybe have like just kind of stumbled into motion pictures, come from like other disciplines, they'll say, I don't like this line, I'll change this line, whatever. And I've actually had TV episodes run off the rails by actors who wouldn't say a speech, and now the movie makes no sense. Like they actually didn't say that. Wait, how did he know that? And the test audience goes, how did he know that was the killer? Because he didn't say earlier the killer has a limp and 1 foot is smaller than the other. So now
that's a problem.
Yeah,
that's a problem.
Like it's not established.
We're almost out of time here, Stephen. Just what are you working on these days? What are you working on right now?
Well, I have a pilot that Roberto Orci, who's done a lot of the recent Star Trek movies and things. We're going out with shortly, which is you always mention a hit. They say we're going to say it's like The Mandalorian on Earth. It's a show about bounty hunters with a kind of a fresh take, but it's like The Mandalorian on Earth because you always want to mention a hit. So that's how you pitch it.
That's
and
the
I
elevator
have
pitch.
a project that is called Radio Berlin, which is going to be a limited a mini-series, which is kind of a great untold story about World War II, about the German propaganda network that was broadcast to all the English-speaking countries to mess with their minds and convince America not to even enter the war. It's forgotten now. People have heard of Axis Sally, but they had a complete network with comedy shows and music. It was like, you know that movie in Inglourious Basterds, the movie the Nazis make?
Yes.
Like a Hero of a Nation. It's like the people making these radio shows that are like that.
Sounds like a winner. Can't wait to see that one.
Our hero is an American agent who is pretending to be one of the many American, British, Australian, and Canadian traders who were on the air. The Nazis recruited people like native English speakers.
Stephen, it's been a real pleasure. Thanks for hanging out for the last 2 hours. Just so many great stories.
I will stick around. What's your next topic? Is it one of your classic topics?
We're going to talk about UFOs with Preston Dennett.
All right. Well, that's UFOs are like just we're at I don't know 11. We're at Spinal Tap 11 with the UFOs now. So I'll be sticking around to listen to that.
All right, my friend. Thank you so much, Stephen D'Souza on Coast to Coast AM.
I think that's all I'm going to do for now. Thanks for watching. Yeah.